let's talk first about the rather tepid conservative pushback against woke. This is in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement still ravaging the political environment in Britain, despite there being no, moral legitimacy for Black Lives Matter here, because from the data that we have, black people are not being systematically oppressed by the police. If that crown goes to anyone, that's the working class white people of the United Kingdom that take that crown. But anyway, this was interesting in many ways, and many of them seem to be revolving around identity, because earlier this month, about a week ago in fact, not even a week ago, there was, I don't know, I don't follow rugby, right? So I don't know what the Six Nations is, I don't know when it's played, I don't know who's involved, and so total noob, and I'm sure you don't, I mean, you give me the look, do you know?
I mean, guess.
Well,
Which Six Nations on Earth play rugby?
don't know.
Well, where do you live?
Well, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales,
Yeah, okay, never mind.
France, Germany?
I'm actually trying to remember.
Oh, see, you don't
New
even
Zealand
know.
and Australia.
Oh, New Zealand, Australia, right, okay. Right, so these Six Nations were having a rugby tournament, which sounds like great fun, and the Irish and Welsh rugby players decided they would refuse to take a knee. All of them. And this was in the Irish Post. Not one Ireland player decided to take the knee. Good. As both teams lined up for their first 6 rounds nation clash, the obligatory anti-racism message came over the tannoy system. Oh, God. However, notably, every single Irish player and Welsh player remains standing. And this comes following the scrutiny of England and Scotland after 14 of the 30 players who lined up did refuse to take the knee. So 16 of them did take the knee, embarrassingly enough. Obviously, some people view the gesture of kneeling to be an endorsement of the left-wing values promoted by Black Lives Matter, as the Irish Post report, which is, yes.
Being told it's Italy and France.
Is it?
Me Copa.
Yeah. Right, see, I don't know. But the point is, politics gets everywhere, even in spheres of life that we're not interested in. And so we want to let you guys know that you are totally justified in not taking the knee, because as they say here, people are seeing it as an endorsement of the left-wing values of Black Lives Matter. That's a tepid way of putting Marxist subversion of Black Lives Matter, which it was, founded by, as they say, quote, doctrinaire, or was it trained Marxists. So yeah, it's absolutely a thing that you can do. But I love the way they say it. It's like, rather than simply the values of anti-racism. It's like, what's that a cover for? Like, just not being racist is anti-racism as far as I'm concerned, but active anti-racism just seems like a Marxist way of attacking the situation.
It's only because that's how all the Marxists define themselves.
Yeah, it seems to be a dog whistle for the Marxists. But yeah, so you had like one England star called Billy Vunipola, who refused to take a knee, criticised Black Lives Matter for burning churches and Bibles.
Based.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but I didn't even know they'd burn churches and Bibles, to be honest.
Of Marxists.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying they wouldn't. I'm just saying I didn't know about it. You know, I was only aware of the commercial damage that they had done. But he said what I said in terms of that movement was not aligned with what I believe in, which is totally reasonable. And the Scottish coach, Gregor Townsend, said he 100% backs his players' decision not to kneel. And the Rugby Football Union, don't even know what that is, has similarly backed the freedom whether to or not to take the knee, and the Scottish Rugby Union also did the same. They just came out and, I mean, presumably sweating, like, you know, looking nervous in the lights of the media, were like, we back our players' decision to have their own political opinions. Don't shoot us! They were like, look, we fully support rugby's ongoing work to end racism and discrimination in our sport. But I know.
As if this is the role of rugby, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, now's the time when, you know, thank you for defeating racism, Scottish Rugby Union.
It's like, what are garbage collectors doing to deal with racism?
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing, as far as I'm aware. They're
What
probably
about lumberjacks?
pro-racism.
Huh?
Definitely pro-racism.
The absurdity of, like, you know, every individual thing has to be...
Mackerel fishers off the coast of Scotland have done nothing against racism. This is disgraceful. Clearly an endorsement of white supremacy. But yeah, so it's interesting how kind of libertarian like their view is on this. Like, well, we're not going to get involved. And I mean, to be fair, I think what they could do is just come out and say, look, we disapprove of political statements in what is meant to be a competitive sports match, because just now isn't the time or the place, and that's not what this is about. But yeah, and so you may remember, was it a couple of weeks ago that Boris had to answer the question, was Joe Biden woke? And his answer was, well, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it's just the kind of weak. Yeah.
I'm of the opinion it was.
Uh,
Saying there's nothing wrong with being woke in the middle of there. Maybe a misstep, but still.
Yeah, I mean, he says there's nothing wrong being woke, but, and whenever you say but about something, what you're saying is actually what I just said wasn't true. So, but the point is, he should be aggressively attacking wokeism, but I've always said that.
Yeah, he should turn around and be like, wokeism is racism and Joe Biden's not that or something, you know? To try and defend his position and the relationship.
But there's no way that Joe Biden would be like, hey, wait a minute. I don't resemble that remark. I am totally woke. But he said, I put myself in the category of sticking up for your history and traditions, which surely is just the bare minimum for the leader of the Conservative Party. I reluctantly, I know, right? Reluctantly put myself in the category of sticking up for our history. So I guess you have no choice. But Priti Patel had a firmer stance on this, which was good. Priti Patel denounced BLM as being just dreadful, which is a good start. When she condemned taking the knee against these protests, she said that she did not support the anti-racism protests that were sparked by the death of George Floyd, and she would not take a knee, which has been adopted by many sports stars and other public figures, as according to The Independent. She got attacked by left-wing activists for saying this. And now, again, it should come as no surprise to anyone that conservatives, who should ostensibly be some brand of liberal, like an actual, propertarian sort of based liberal, would look at communists, Marxists, that are using the term Black Lives Matter to advance a distinctly anti-liberal agenda and say, well, look, I'm not for that. Right? That should be no surprise whatsoever. In fact, it should be, every single one should be very vocal about this. In the same way they should be like, yeah, I'm actually not in favor of setting up a caliphate either. I'm actually really against that. That goes against my values as a conservative. Weirdly enough, bringing on the new Soviet Union also goes against my values as a conservative. I know this is a controversial thing.
This is again hopeful,
Yeah, I know.
The way I see conservatives talk about Islam and, Islamists. It's very weird.
Yeah, I know. I posted a meme to my Instagram the other day. It was Christian Bale in American Psycho, where he's like very impressive, and someone had modified to be impressive, very base, and I was just like, yeah, this is basically me whenever a conservative says something accidentally not Marxist, and that's how I feel about it. There's an emptiness in conservative thinking, frankly. But anyway,
British conservative thinking.
Yeah. American conservatives are actually much better in this regard. But Abba Amoa, who leads the action group Justice for Black Lives, said she felt upset by Miss Patel's comments. Oh, well, if Abba Amoa is upset, then bring on the communism. I don't want to upset this random race activist. She's busy grifting out here because she's black. I mean, she's upset that Priti Patel isn't going to let the grift go on.
I mean, it's literally that meme of here's 36 pictures of a brown child crying, therefore burn the Constitution.
Yeah, don't worry about the borders, abolish the country. Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
Abolish individual rights, only race rights matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no thanks.
She says, it just shows how little change has come from last year, which is a shame. Nah. I think Priti Patel's comments were an attack on Black Lives Matter. I mean, she called you, what was it, a disgrace? A dreadful, sorry. And she said she totally opposes Black Lives Matter. Yes, they were an attack on Black Lives Matter. It really proves how our government is threatened by our political action. Yes, a liberal government is threatened by a race uprising. That's correct. That's true. That's a communist race uprising is not what a liberal government wants. Then this is the best statement. The movement challenges the white supremacy, patriarchal, ableist capitalism of today by giving voice to black, brown, working-class Brits, and this is not what our government, particularly this conservative government, wants, because it's a threat to wealth and power. It's a threat to common sense and good governance as well, okay? There are other concerns, but I find it really interesting that two non-white women are busy having this argument about Black Lives Matter, and they're like, yeah, but the white supremacist capitalist patriarch is like, the hell have we got to do with this,
We're all busy writing tax policy, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's like, she's like giving voice to brown women. Well, there's a brown woman who's like, shut up, go away. But this is the thing. It's just progressive. Not even progressive. Intersectional buzzword bingo with these activists, and they get airtime, so we've got to cover it. But this has led The Guardian to start pushing back on the conservative war on woke. The white women are here to defend Black Lives Matter. Thank you, Gabby Hinsliff, for your service. Without you, I don't know where Priti Patel would be. Presumably silenced, as you want all brown women to be, clearly.
Just like this image of all these like left white women with clubs looking at the brown woman.
Yeah, the Indian women are like, actually, law and order is good, and the left white women are just like, no. But the funny thing about this article, right, is that I had to go through it to extract what she was trying to say, because everything she's got paragraphs, entire paragraphs describing like a one-line example that you have to pick out, because the framing of it is as if all of this is either not happening or a good thing, really, right? So there's a crusade to stop historical statues being taken down if they cause a contemporary offence. That's a good thing. A free speech champion is going to be appointed to universities to fight back against the no platforming of speakers on ideological grounds. That's a good thing. Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary, would instruct heritage bodies and museums to defend our culture and history from a noisy minority of activists constantly trying to do Britain down. That's totally sensible. You can see how far we've got to go down through the thing just to get those 3 lines, right? Because she's framing all of this as if this is there's something wrong with museums saying, actually, maybe we shouldn't burn down our own heritage. I mean, I know that we're just the museum where it's located, and that's our raison d'etre, but it just seems useful that we'll have something to display. But Gabby says, these attempts to breathe new life into suspiciously old fights aren't merely about telling the Tory base what it wants to hear or distracting Tory backbenchers restless about the lifting of lockdown, though they usefully serve both purposes. They're also about trying to dictate the terms on which normal domestic politics might resume as the panic begins to recede. Pandemic, sorry. And it's like old fights. These are old fights, are they? I mean, how old is old? This was last year, 6 months ago. Like these old fights. Oh, don't worry about this, says Gabby, diving in the way of Black Lives Matter, so we don't. Priti Patel doesn't continue to stomp on them. The last thing Keir Starmer wants ahead of May's election is a culture war. Well, then the Conservatives are doing the right thing and should continue to prosecute this culture war. If The Guardian is like, yeah, no, don't do this, it's bad for Keir Starmer, then do it even more. Do it more and more and more. Make Keir Starmer get down on his goddamn bended knee again. And I love that picture of Keir Starmer on his bended knee, because he looks so angry about having to do it. Like, I'm Sir Keir Starmer, damn it. Why am I on my knee? But like says, dragging him into a damned if you do, damned if you don't position last summer, where there was no conceivable stance on taking the knee or pushing statues into Bristol Harbour that could possibly please both millennial Labour voters at ease with contemporary identity politics and older, more socially conservative voters thoroughly exasperated by it. Well, given how the millennial Labour voters aren't really a very big voting bloc and tend to be unreliable voters at best, why wouldn't Keir Starmer go for the old socially conservative Labour voters? Why would he not? Again, the Conservative Party should be pushing all of these. Make Keir Starmer marry his young identity politician Labour voters. Make him, bring them in. Yes, your Black Lives Matter. Make him defend these things. But anyway, I love the fact that Gabby is pretending as if the culture war isn't just raging across this country in all aspects. Like the rugby. They've got to sit there and talk about Black Lives Matter. Why?
Well, football as well. Like I was home for Christmas and I was watching football with my family, and we saw the stands have Black Lives Matter written all over them. Yep. Which why?
Yep. The obligatory anti-racist message is coming over the tannoy, and it's like, oh god.
But that's only when the camera's near the goal, and when it's away from the goal where you can't see the message, they just bring up a little logo that says Black Lives Matter as well.
Oh god,
it's so cringe. I couldn't stand watching it.
Disgraceful, right? And so the idea that Gabby can sit there and go, oh, well, I mean, no one's talking about culture war. The Conservatives just bringing this up out of nowhere. Gaslighting. Just pure leftist gaslighting and defensiveness, because they know that they're really out in the open. They're quite exposed. I mean, it's everywhere, right? This is, and again, just another one of those examples where the argument that they have just has no legitimacy about racist pubs. Right? Pubs in England are racist. We can go to the next one, John. It's not about the content of the pub. It's not about what happens inside the pub. No one's accusing them yet of being racist. Although I don't doubt
the inanimate building is the problem.
It is actually the building that's the problem. Yeah, it's not even the building. It's the name of the building that is the problem, right? Because I mean, I'm sure I probably could find articles saying, well, what goes on in these pubs is also racism. Presumably, but this is the thing that was reported the other day by BBC. Green King Black Boy pubs renamed in anti-racist move. You know why, right?
Is this to do with King Charles II?
Maybe. No one knows. But it's assumed to be racism, right? I'm not even joking.
So the pubs are called the Black Boy.
Yeah, there are 3 pubs called the Black Boy. Now, a lot of pubs in England are very, very old. Like, unironically, like predating the United States. And they come from much older traditions.
Predating large amounts of black population within the UK.
Or any black population. Predating colonialism. Predating the discovery of the Americas. And the discovery of, like, Africa and things like this. Or, like, the sub-Saharan Africa. So, a lot of these things do not come from... And you get this in, like, the Viking sagas. We've got, like, Halfdan the Black. And everyone's like, that must mean he had black skin. No, it means he's black-hearted or had black hair or something like that. There are... We use black as a description to describe things that aren't skin color, right?
Like, there is a world outside of racial politics, folks.
Yeah. If you can believe it, like... And we lived in that world for generations, thousands of years. But yeah, so one of them called the Black Boy and another called the Black's Head. The managing director said there was a perception that the names were, quote, linked with racism. So, well, if there's a perception...
Perception in your own head that you've made up.
Exactly. Well, the Marxists are made up. And Halima Begum of the Runnymede Trust... welcomed the news. Yeah, exactly, right. Like Halima Begum, right.
Runnymede Trust.
Yeah, Runnymede Trust. Right?
Opinion disregarded.
Exactly. The Runnymede Trust is named after, of course, Runnymede, where the Magna Carta was signed, but it seems to be an explicitly anti-British organisation that is staffed by people like Halima Begum, who are glad that this is happening because these names, as she says, have been a continual reminder of a history of oppression. What, from King Charles II? I mean, okay, based, but it's not about race as far as we can tell. So there are apparently about 70 pubs called the Black Boy in the UK, and there remains no consensus on where the name came from. Links to the mining industry and a nickname for King Charles II have both been cited as possibilities. But as you can see, these names go back a very long way. Another theory relates to Native American figures placed outside the premises sell tobacco, and no one knows. But, as they say, the perception is the names were linked with racism, which is why we knew we had to take the first step if we want to continue on our journey to become a truly anti-racist organisation, said the owner of Green King. And it's like, you just have no cultural respect for this country at all, do you?
No.
You see the word black, and you're like, oh, dog whistle, that means me. It's like, no, it doesn't. It actually doesn't mean you. It actually really has nothing to do with you. The world doesn't revolve around you. You are not the center of the universe. And actually, we're not really interested in your opinion.
But I love the examples they gave there. So they talked about if it's the mining industry. Yeah. So the guys go down the mines, come back up, you'd be covered in soot, so you'd be blackface. And that has nothing to do with race. So
it's not even...
opinion disregarded.
It's not... You can't call it blackface because it's not deliberate. Like, they don't want to be covered in coal. It's just coal, you can't... Right? Yeah, you're mining all day. You've got no choice.
The Charles II one I find interesting because I got in an argument with someone because the pub fairly...
Because he had black hair, right?
So there's an argument from the black nationalists that apparently when he was young, his skin used to look black as well, and therefore he got nicknamed as the Black Boy because of it. Okay. It's like, not sure that really makes sense because I'm not sure how many black people were available in that sort of time period near England and France.
1610.
So
no, not many.
So not sure about that. But then it's like, well, if it's the black hair, again, who cares? Like, this doesn't make any sense. I actually got in an argument with someone about this, and they were trying to argue he was black. I'm just like, here's all the paintings of him.
Yeah. Believe it or not, we actually have literally paintings that old in this country. It's like the Anne Boleyn thing, where it's like they've cast a black actress, and it's like, okay, but we actually know exactly what you look like. But
they accused me of showing propaganda when I showed the paintings.
Oh,
like,
well, I mean,
because that was what was on their mind at the time.
Yeah, we want to erase the black people. I mean, I've had these arguments like Edward the Black Prince. Who's Edward the First, was it? Edward, I can't remember which one it was, but he fought in a bunch of battles in the 100 Years' War in like the 14th century, and like, why was he called the Black Prince? Because he had black armor. He painted his armor black because it was intimidating. That's it. It's not about race. It's kind of just not as exciting as the racial activists would want us to believe.
Actually, it's kind of exciting to have a guy who's painted himself in black armor.
That's it's cool. I mean, he looked like, exactly. Terrifying on the battlefield.
It's more interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was the terror of the French.
He's just some black guy. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's not really very exciting. But I mean, like, Edward the Black Prince, he was an absolute titan on the battlefield as well. So the French must have been terrified. So that's good. So we're not renaming that.
No.